The world sees billionaire CEO Min Park as untouchable, cold steel wrapped in Armani, a man who turns cities into profit margins without blinking. But when he walks into that university lecture hall, he doesn't notice the sea of eager faces practically vibrating with desperation for his attention. His eyes land on one person, the girl in the third row who's completely unconscious, her head pillowed on her arms like the lecture hall is her personal bedroom. Adeje Okonkwo isn't trying to make a statement. She's just trying not to collapse after juggling 3 jobs and an engineering degree on a sleep deficit that would hospitalize most people. She thinks passing out in front of Seoul's most powerful CEO is rock bottom. She has no idea that Min didn't just notice a sleeping student. He saw a puzzle that demanded solving, a life that needed restructuring, and a woman he suddenly needed to possess. The silence inside Min Bentley was the kind money could buy. Engineered, pressurized, absolute. Beyond the tinted windows, Seoul blurred past in shades of concrete and morning fog. Inside smelled of leather that cost more than most people's cars, and air so filtered it could have been bottled and sold as premium oxygen. Min adjusted his platinum cufflinks, his face set in its default expression of controlled irritation. He checked his watch, a Vacheron Constantine that could fund a small village, and noted the time, 9:03. "We'll arrive in 7 minutes, sir," his assistant, Director Han, announced from the front seat without turning around. Han had learned years ago that eye contact during Min contemplative moods was career suicide. "Refresh my memory on why I agreed to this circus," Min said, voice smooth as aged whiskey, not looking up from the tablet displaying his company's quarterly projections. The numbers showed vertical growth that would make competitors weep. For Min it was just another Wednesday. "Dean Kim was your father's business partner, sir," Han recited from memory. "He requested this guest lecture as a personal favor. The optics are favorable. The engineering students regard you with something approaching religious devotion." "They worship my net worth," Min corrected, closing the tablet with a decisive click. He pressed fingers to his temples. "They want formulas for maximizing profit and minimizing liability, not lessons on building something with actual integrity." At 34, Min commanded a real estate and tech empire spanning 4 continents. He possessed everything society claimed mattered: influence that moved markets, a face that sold magazines, power that made politicians nervous. Yet beneath it all hummed a persistent, gnawing emptiness. His life had become a sequence of inevitable victories. He entered rooms, people bowed. He made offers, people accepted. He frowned, people scrambled. No resistance, no surprise, just a frictionless glide through a world that had surrendered long ago. The Bentley glided through the university gates. Students already lined the pathways, phones raised like digital offerings, hoping to capture even a glimpse of him. "Tiresome," Min muttered, looking away. Adeje Okonkwo was definitely not lining any pathways. She was currently sprinting across campus, death-gripping a thermos of home-brewed coffee because the campus cafe prices were laughable, her canvas bag slamming against her ribs with each stride. Exhausted didn't begin to cover it. This was cellular-level fatigue, the kind that made reality feel like moving through honey. Library shift until 11, straight to her bartending gig until 4 in the morning, then home to wrestle with her sustainable infrastructure thesis until sunrise. She'd managed exactly 37 minutes of sleep before her alarm shrieked about Professor Chen's mandatory lecture series, guest speaker to be revealed. She didn't care who was speaking. She just knew missing it meant losing her scholarship, and losing her scholarship meant going home. Home wasn't an option. She was going to be an engineer. She was going to design affordable housing systems that actually worked. She just had to survive this semester first. Adeje crashed through the lecture hall doors, already breathing hard. The space was packed, warm, smelling of floor wax and too many bodies. She scanned the tiered seats and spotted one empty chair in the middle section, wedged between someone watching videos on their phone and someone frantically color-coding notes. "Sorry, excuse me, pardon me," she whispered, squeezing past knees and backpacks. She dropped into the seat, her heavy bag hitting the floor with a thud. She yanked off her knit cap, shaking out her box braids. She tugged at her oversized hoodie, searching for a position that didn't make her spine scream. "Just stay conscious," she told herself. "Take notes for 10 minutes, then you can sleep during lunch." The lights dimmed. The room fell silent, heavy with anticipation. The dean walked on stage, practically glowing. "Students," the dean boomed, "today we have an extraordinary surprise, a visionary who needs no introduction. Please welcome the CEO of Genesis Tower Group, Mr. Park Min-jin." The applause was thunderous. The person beside Adaisy actually gasped, "No way!" Adaisy clapped politely, but her eyelids felt weighted with concrete. She watched through blurring vision as a man walked on stage, tall, impossibly tall. Even from this distance, his tailored perfection was obvious. He moved with predatory grace, like a wolf entering a petting zoo. He approached the podium. Stage lights caught his face, sharp angles, devastating bone structure, eyes that swept the crowd without actually seeing anyone. "Engineering," he began, voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, "is the art of controlled manipulation." It was a beautiful voice, deep, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Adaisy opened her notebook. She wrote the date. She wrote, "Speaker, Park Min-jin." Then the room's warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. His voice became a lullaby, a distant ocean. "I'll just rest my eyes for 1 second," she thought, "just to reset." Her lashes touched her cheeks. Her breathing deepened. The pen slipped from her fingers. Her head grew heavy, sliding off her palm to rest on her crossed arms. Adaisy was completely gone. Min-jun was 12 minutes into his standard speech on structural dynamics, watching students nod like programmed robots. They were terrified of him. He could see it in their faces, that careful fear. He hated it. He wanted challenge, debate, something real. His gaze drifted upward, scanning the middle rows for anything to hold his attention. Then he stopped. At first, he thought she was taking notes, but her posture was too relaxed, too unguarded. He narrowed his eyes. The girl in the gray hoodie, her head was down, resting on her arms. Her shoulders rose and fell in slow, steady rhythm. She was asleep. Min-jun stopped mid-sentence. The silence was immediate and terrifying. 300 students froze. The dean looked like cardiac arrest was imminent. They assumed Min-jun was furious. Min-jun wasn't furious. He was fascinated. He stepped away from the podium, abandoning his notes entirely. He walked to the stage edge, eyes locked on the sleeping figure. Stage lights illuminated her deep brown skin, her braids spilling across the desk like dark water. She looked peaceful. In a room full of people desperate for his attention, she was the only one who genuinely didn't care. She had prioritized her own needs over his ego. It was the most intriguing thing he'd witnessed in years. He felt something tighten in his chest, not just attraction, though she was undeniably beautiful in this raw, unguarded moment. It was recognition, a possessive instinct he didn't know existed. "Who are you?" he wondered, "and what's made you this exhausted?" He realized he'd been silent for 25 seconds. The audience held its breath. "Mr. Park?" the dean squeaked. Min-jun ignored the dean. His eyes stayed on the girl. "Structure," he said, his voice dropping an octave, softer now, directed entirely at her sleeping form, "means nothing without acknowledging the human element, the chaos, the exhaustion, the reality of survival." He continued his lecture, but he rewrote it on the spot. He stopped discussing profit margins and started discussing sanctuaries, spaces designed for rest, buildings that served people rather than portfolios. He spoke for another 25 minutes. He never took his eyes off her. He watched her shift slightly, watched a single braid slip from her shoulder. He was memorizing her. Suddenly, a daze jerked awake. Her arm slid off the desk edge. She flailed, knocking her metal water bottle to the floor. Clang, clang, clang. The sound echoed like gunfire through the silent hall. A daze shot upright, eyes wide, looking like she'd been caught committing a crime. She grabbed the bottle, muttering, "Oh God, oh no, I'm sorry." She looked up, expecting a furious professor. Instead, she locked eyes with Minjun. He was standing right at the stage edge, towering above everyone. And he was smiling, not kindly. It was a predator smile, a subtle curve of lips that didn't touch his eyes. His eyes remained intense, burning with dark intelligence that seemed to see straight through her. "Enjoy your rest?" he asked. No microphone needed, his voice carried perfectly. Adaze's face blazed with heat. She wanted the floor to swallow her whole. I was mentally processing the concepts." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. "Processing," Minjun repeated, tasting the word. "Fascinating. Perhaps you can share your mental notes with me after the lecture." It wasn't a request. When the lecture ended, Adaze tried to bolt. She shoved her notebook into her bag, keeping her head down, joining the exodus of students. She was almost at the exit. "You in the gray hoodie." The voice cut through the chatter like a blade. The crowd parted instantly. Adaze froze, turned slowly. Minjun stood there, and up close, he was overwhelming. The air around him felt charged. He smelled of cedar, expensive fabric, and power. He looked down at her, and the intensity of his gaze made her knees weak. "My name isn't you," Adaze said, lifting her chin despite her embarrassment. If she was going down, she'd go down fighting. "It's Adaze." "A daisy," Minjun said, testing the name like he was evaluating its structural integrity. "You were drooling on your notebook, a daisy." A daisy wiped her mouth reflexively, mortified. "I work nights. I apologize for the disrespect. It won't happen again." "Show me." He extended his hand. "My drool?" "The notebook." A daisy hesitated, clutching her bag. "It's messy. Just rough sketches." "I run a multi-billion won corporation, a daisy. I understand the difference between chaos and vision. Hand it over." She pulled out the notebook and gave it to him, her hand trembling slightly. Minjun opened it, flipped past her non-existent lecture notes, and found her personal drawings. He went completely still. He was looking at a sketch of a high-density vertical farm, a complex lattice of steel and vegetation designed to filter urban pollution. It was brilliant, raw, chaotic, unrefined, but the vision was undeniable. This was the work of someone who understood that buildings should serve humanity, not just skylines. He looked up at her, and the amusement vanished, replaced by something heavier, something permanent. "This is her," his mind whispered, calm, factual, like observing gravity. "She's brilliant, exhausted, and exactly what's been missing." "You have genuine talent," he said quietly. "I have student loans," she shot back, taking the book. "Talent doesn't pay tuition." Minjun's eyes darkened. He stepped closer, invading her space, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark irises. "Go home, a daisy. Rest. You look like you're about to collapse." "I have a shift in 40 minutes. "Not anymore," he murmured, almost to himself. "Excuse me?" "It was enlightening watching you sleep, a daisy," he said, stepping back, his mask of indifference sliding back into place as his security team closed in. "I suspect we'll be seeing considerably more of each other." He turned and walked away, his entourage surrounding him. A daisy stood there, heart hammering, clutching her notebook. She felt like she'd just survived a natural disaster. She thought he was mocking her. She thought that was the end of it. She didn't see Min Jun slide into his Bentley 2 minutes later. Didn't see him pull out his phone, his face set in grim determination. "Han," Min Jun said, staring out the window at a Daisy walking toward the bus stop. "Get me everything on her. Who she owes money to, where she lives, her professors, her schedule. Is there a concern with this student, sir?" Min Jun watched a Daisy board the bus, a predator tracking prey, knowing exactly where it was headed. "No," Min Jun said, a dark smile touching his lips. "She's not a concern. She's the solution. She's exhausted, Han. I'm going to restructure her entire life, whether she agrees or not." If the first meeting was a spark, the next 48 hours were a natural disaster. It wasn't a wave that washed over a Daisy. It was a complete rewriting of the physical laws governing her existence. It started at 6:15 on a Thursday morning. A Daisy woke to her phone buzzing against the crate she used as a nightstand. She groaned, rolling over in her narrow bed, muscles aching from double shifts. She reached for the phone to dismiss the alarm, but her thumb hovered over a notification from the university bursar's office. Subject: payment confirmation, spring semester. A Daisy blinked, brain foggy. She sat up, her thin blanket pooling around her waist. She tapped the email. "Dear Miss Okonkwo, this email confirms that your outstanding tuition balance of 28 million won has been paid in full via wire transfer. Your account status is now cleared. Your registration hold has been lifted." "What?" a Daisy whispered, her voice small in the cold, cramped apartment. She logged into the student portal, fingers trembling, expecting a system error. But there it was in bold green text, balance 0 won. And below it, housing stipend disbursed, 14 million won. A Daisy dropped the phone like it was radioactive. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked through her chest. This wasn't a clerical error. Errors didn't wire 14 million won into your account. She scrambled out of bed, pulling on yesterday's jeans. She had to get to financial aid, had to fix this before they arrested her for fraud. But as she grabbed her keys, her phone rang. Not the school, her landlord, Mr. Cho, a man who usually only called to scream about late rent or threaten eviction for existing too loudly. "A Daisy?" Mr. Cho's voice was bizarrely cheerful. "Good morning. Just wanted to inform you the heating's been repaired. Plumber's there now. And we're installing new windows tomorrow. Triple paned, German imports." A Daisy stood in her tiny hallway, staring at peeling wallpaper. "Mr. Cho, are you drunk? Last week you told me heat was a luxury I hadn't earned." "New ownership, A Daisy. New management. The building was acquired this morning by a holding company, Genesis Properties. They have very specific standards for tenants." Genesis. Min Jun's company. The air left A Daisy's lungs. "Park Min Jun," she hissed. She hung up and dialed her morning job. She needed to tell Manager Kim she'd be late because she was currently having a complete breakdown. "A Daisy?" Kim answered immediately. "Don't come in." "Kim, I'm sorry, I'm just running." "No, I mean don't come in ever. We're closed for renovations indefinitely. I've been instructed to pay out your remaining contract, 6 months. Your check is being processed. Please don't come to the store. There are lawyers everywhere." A Daisy lowered the phone slowly. The silence in her apartment was deafening. He hadn't just paid her tuition. He was systematically dismantling every obstacle in her life. Surgical, efficient, terrifying. She didn't run to the financial aid office. She ran outside. Parked directly in front of her crumbling building, gleaming like an alien spacecraft in a junkyard, was the matte black Bentley. It was blocking a fire hydrant. A parking officer stood beside it, not writing a ticket, but looking at the driver with visible fear. The back window lowered. Min Jun sat there, wearing navy today, silk tie loosened, reading an actual newspaper. He looked up as A Daisy stormed out, her hair wild, fury radiating off her in waves. "You!" A Daisy shouted, pointing at him. "You cannot do this!" "Good morning, A Daisy," Minjun said calmly, folding the newspaper. "You look more rested. The shadows under your eyes have diminished." "Don't talk about my shadows. Did you buy my building?" "I bought the entire block," Minjun corrected effortlessly. "The zoning was inefficient, and the landlord was exploitative. I'm restructuring it. You're welcome." "And my job? Did you buy the cafe, too?" "The coffee was burnt, and the profit margins were abysmal. I did everyone a favor." Minjun opened the door and stepped out. He was tall. That was always the first thing she forgot, how much physical space he commanded. He stood on the cracked sidewalk, his polished shoes gleaming against the grime. He looked at her not with guilt, but with the satisfaction of someone who'd successfully debugged a malfunctioning system. "I didn't request your help," Daisy said, her voice shaking. "I don't want your money. I want to earn my degree. I want to work for my life." "You were working yourself into an early grave," Minjun countered, his voice dropping as he stepped into her space. He smelled of rain and cold iron. "I calculated your schedule. Between 3 jobs and full-time studies, you averaged 3.2 hours of sleep nightly. That's unsustainable. It degrades cognitive function, stifles creativity." He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. Then, shockingly gentle, he tucked a stray braid behind her ear. "I want the creativity, Daisy. I want the mind that designed those vertical farms. I can't have that mind if it's serving overpriced coffee to mediocrity." "So I'm an investment," Daisy slapped his hand away. "Just R&D to you." "You're a rarity," Minjun said, his eyes burning into hers. "And I protect rare things. Get in the car." "No." "Daisy," he sighed, sounding bored with her resistance. "I have a city planning committee meeting in 18 minutes regarding the new waterfront initiative. I want your opinion on the blueprints. If you get in the car, I promise I'll stop acquiring for 24 hours. Daisy looked at him. She hated him, his arrogance, his money, his presumption. But she looked at the open car door, then at the gray, hopeless street behind her. She thought about the blueprints he mentioned, the access. "If you ever go behind my back again," Daisy warned, "I'll burn your buildings down. I'm an engineer. I know where the load-bearing walls are." A genuine laugh escaped Minjun's lips. Deep, rich, a sound that made Daisy's stomach flip. "I believe you completely. Get in." That moment marked the transition from her old life to the surreal existence of being Minjun's project. The next 2 months were a blur of vertigo. Minjun kept his word, mostly. He stopped buying her employers, but he replaced them with experiences far more seductive than cash. He didn't date her. He consumed her schedule. He'd pick her up after classes, not for dates, but for field research. He took her to the top of Seoul sky at midnight, bribing security so they could sit on the observation deck and debate wind loads. He flew her to a private stone quarry in Norway for a weekend just so she could feel raw granite before it was cut. He showed her the world as he saw it, a grid of potential, a puzzle waiting solutions. And in turn, she softened him. She dragged him to street food vendors where he examined tteokbokki like it was an alien specimen before eating it and admitting grudgingly that it was efficiently flavorful. They were falling in love. It happened in quiet moments, in the back of the car reviewing sketches, their knees touching, in the way he watched her eat when she was hungry, in the way she caught him rubbing his eyes when he thought no one was looking, and she realized he was just as lonely as she was. But with intimacy came shadow. Campus turned vicious. Daisy wasn't Daisy anymore. She was the billionaire's pet. She walked into lecture halls and conversations died. Her group project partners refused to work with her, assuming she'd just pay someone to do it. "She's only here because he pays the bills," she heard a girl whisper in the studio one afternoon. "Have you seen her designs? They're decent, but not Bingley decent." Daisy gripped her drafting pencil until it snapped. She was losing herself, drowning in his shadow. She needed a win, a real one one that bore no fingerprints of Genesis Tower Group. She found it in the Nakamura Fellowship, prestigious, based in Tokyo, notoriously competitive. And crucially, Nakamura was Min Jun's rival. They despised each other. If she got this, it would be because of her talent, not her boyfriend. She applied under her mother's maiden name, submitted her portfolio late at night using a VPN so Min Jun's network wouldn't flag the traffic. She waited 3 weeks. On a rainy Tuesday, she was at Min Jun's penthouse, a fortress of glass and steel, cold and impressive. A Daisy sat on the white Italian leather sofa, laptop open. Min Jun was in the shower. Her email pinged. Subject: Application status, Nakamura Global Fellowship. A Daisy's heart hammered. She clicked. Dear applicant, thank you for your interest. While your portfolio shows promise, we cannot proceed due to a conflict of interest flagged by our legal department regarding your association with Genesis Tower Group. A Daisy stopped reading. Blood drained from her face. Association? She hadn't told anyone, hadn't used his name. The bathroom door opened, steam billowed out. Min Jun emerged, wrapping a towel around his waist. He looked relaxed, his hair damp and messy. He saw her face and paused. A Daisy, what's wrong? A Daisy stood slowly, turned the laptop so he could see the screen. How did they know? She asked, her voice deadly quiet. I used a VPN. I used a different name. How did they know I was associated with you? Min Jun glanced at the screen. He didn't look surprised, didn't look guilty. He walked to the kitchen island and poured himself water. I have a standing alert on your identification number, A Daisy, he said, taking a sip. Any employment inquiry involving you is flagged to my office. You have an alert on me? I contacted Nakamura's office this morning, Min Jun continued as casually as discussing weather. I informed them you're currently under exclusive contract negotiations with Genesis and that hiring you would constitute corporate interference. They withdrew immediately. Nakamura is terrified of my legal team. A Daisy stared at him. The glass walls suddenly felt like aquarium walls. I didn't want a contract with Genesis, she whispered. I wanted that fellowship. It was mine. I earned the interview. Why would you want to work for Nakamura? Min Jun asked, genuinely baffled. He set the glass down. He's outdated. His designs are derivative. At Genesis, I'm creating a division specifically for you. You'll skip junior positions entirely. You'll be lead engineer by 26. I'm handing you the keys to the kingdom, A Daisy. I don't want your kingdom, A Daisy screamed. The sound tore through the quiet apartment. I don't want to be the CEO's girlfriend who got a pity position. I want to struggle. I want to fail. I want to know that when I succeed, I did it. Struggle is inefficient, Min Jun snapped, his patience fraying. Why do you romanticize suffering? I have the power to smooth the road for you. Why are you deliberately adding obstacles? Because it's my road! A Daisy grabbed her bag, knocking over a vase of white orchids. The porcelain shattered. Min Jun flinched, looking at the broken pieces, then at her. A Daisy, stop. You're being emotional. I'm being human. She backed toward the elevator. You don't love me, Min Jun. You love the idea of me. You love having a rough draft you can edit and perfect. But I'm not a building. You can't renovate me. If you walk through that door, Min Jun said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous warning, you're walking away from opportunities people would kill for. Good. A Daisy jabbed the elevator button. Let them kill for it. I'd rather starve than be your project. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. Min Jun stood in the center of his perfect $1,000,000 living room, surrounded by broken porcelain, watching her. For the first time, he didn't move to stop her. He looked confused, as if his calculations had finally returned an error he couldn't solve. The doors slid shut, severing the connection. A Daisy collapsed against the metal wall, sobbing. She had her freedom back, and it felt like her heart had been ripped out. The silence in Min Jun's penthouse was different now. Before A Daisy, silence had been luxury, a sign of exclusivity, soundproofing that kept chaos at bay. Now silence was physical weight. It pressed against his eardrums. It felt less like peace and more like vacuum. Min-jun stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at Seoul's sprawling neon grid. It had been 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours of absolute radio silence. "Sir?" Min-jun didn't turn. He watched red taillights flow like arterial blood through city streets. "What is it, Han?" "The Gangnam Complex acquisition is ready for your signature," his assistant said, stepping hesitantly onto the plush carpet. "It's the deal of the year. You've pursued this property for 3 years." "Leave it," Min-jun said. He felt nothing. The thrill of the hunt, the dopamine of the deal, gone. "Sir, if I may," Han adjusted his glasses, voice trembling slightly. "You haven't slept properly in weeks. You're snapping at board members. You fired the marketing director for breathing too loudly. Perhaps you should contact her." Min-jun laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Contact her and say what? I offered her the world, Han. I offered her the path of least resistance, and she looked at me like I was a monster." "With all respect, sir," Han said, stepping into dangerous territory, "you didn't offer her a path. You built a highway and forced her onto it. Miss Okonkwo is an engineer. Engineers prefer to build things themselves, even if the foundation is messy." Min-jun turned slowly, looked at his assistant, a man paid to agree with him. "Get out." Han bowed and fled. Min-jun turned back to the window, closed his eyes. All he could see was a Daisy standing in the elevator, tears in her eyes, choosing a life of struggle over a life with him. He had treated her like a distressed asset, tried to acquire her, renovate her, flip her life into something valuable. He'd forgotten the one variable he preached in his lectures, the human element. He didn't need to fix her, he realized with a crushing ache in his chest. He just needed to witness her. A Daisy was currently witnessing the bottom of a lukewarm cup of instant ramen. She was back in the engineering lab basement, surrounded by cardboard scraps, glue guns, and balsa wood. Her final capstone project was due in 11 hours. The green lung, her vertical farm concept, had moved from sketch to physical model. She was exhausted. Her eyes burned, her back ached, and she missed him so much it made her teeth hurt. She missed the way he listened, the way he smelled, even his arrogant lectures about efficiency, because usually he was right. But she held on to her anger like a shield. He tried to erase her agency. She couldn't go back to being a project. "A Daisy, you okay?" Her project partner, a guy named Tai-min who perpetually smelled of energy drinks, poked his head around her model. "I'm fine," a Daisy lied, gluing a tiny plastic tree onto the structure. "Just tired." "Well, wake up. The jury arrives at 6, and guess who the guest judge is?" A Daisy's stomach dropped. Who? Nakamura's lead scout. Apparently someone tipped them off that this year's class has exceptional talent. It's huge. If they like your model, they offer positions on the spot. A Daisy froze. Nakamura, the firm Min-jun had blocked. A tiny spark of hope ignited in her chest. This was it. The universe giving her a second chance to do it the right way, on her own merit. The university exhibition hall was a chaotic swarm of nervous energy. Students in ill-fitting suits stood by their models rehearsing pitches. The air smelled of cheap cologne and desperation. A Daisy stood by her display. Her model, the green lung, towered over others. A complex spiraling structure designed to filter carbon while providing affordable housing. Messy, bold, unapologetically ambitious. She smoothed down her skirt, thrift store purchase, and her braids were pulled into a severe bun. She looked professional. She felt like she might vomit. "Ms. Okonkwo?" A Daisy looked up. 3 judges stood before her. In the center was a woman with sharp glasses and a clipboard, the scout from Nakamura. "Yes," a Daisy said, forcing a smile. Welcome to the Green Lung. She began her pitch, talked about airflow, structural load, social impact. She was 5 minutes in, finding her rhythm when the doors at the back opened. The atmosphere changed instantly. Ambient chatter died, heads turned. Min Jun walked in. He wasn't flanked by security this time. He was alone. He wore a black turtleneck and a long wool coat, looking like a dark prince of the city. He didn't stride to the front, didn't demand attention. He simply walked to the back and leaned against a pillar, hands in his pockets. He wasn't looking at the judges. He was looking at her. A Daisy faltered, lost her train of thought. The Nakamura scout raised an eyebrow. Ms. Okonkwo, the carbon filtration system? A Daisy took a deep breath, looked at Minjun. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just nodded, a microscopic tilt of his chin. Go on, the nod said. Build it. She turned back to the judges. The filtration system uses an algae-based bioactive facade, she said, her voice stronger now. It transforms the building into a living organism. She nailed the pitch, answered every question. When the Nakamura scout grilled her on material costs, a Daisy didn't flinch. She quoted exact market rates, rates she'd learned during those late-night drives with Minjun. When she finished, the scout actually smiled. Impressive, Ms. Okonkwo. Very impressive. The judges moved on. A Daisy slumped against her table, adrenaline crashing. She looked toward the back. Minjun was still there. He pushed off the pillar and walked toward her. The crowd parted, whispers hissing like steam. It's him, the CEO. What's he doing here? He stopped in front of her display. Didn't look at her, looked at the model. Studied the tiny balsa wood details with the same intensity he used for billion-dollar blueprints. The central tower is 4 degrees off axis, he said quietly. It's intentional, a Daisy countered, crossing her arms, to account for wind shear. Minjun looked at her then. His eyes were soft, vulnerable. I know, it's brilliant. The compliment hit harder than an insult. Why are you here, Minjun? She asked, voice low. Did you come to buy the university, or just to tell the Nakamura scout I'm unavailable again? Minjun winced. He reached into his coat and pulled out a plain white envelope, placed it on the table beside her model. I came to apologize, he said. The words sounded foreign in his mouth, heavy and unpracticed. I contacted Nakamura personally 3 days ago. I told him I'd lied. I told him my claim on you was baseless and that blocking your application was an act of personal cowardice. A Daisy stared at the envelope. This is a formal letter of recommendation, Minjun continued, from me to Nakamura. It outlines your strengths, your vision, your stubborn refusal to compromise quality. I told them if they don't hire you, they're fools. But I also told them if they do hire you, they better pay you what you're worth. A Daisy picked up the envelope, hands shaking. You recommended me to your biggest rival? I want you to win, A Daisy, Minjun said, his voice cracking slightly. I finally realized it doesn't count if I rig the game. You need to win on your own terms, and I just want to be the one clapping in the audience. He took a step back. I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to have that. He turned to leave. He looked defeated. The titan of industry, the man who owned the skyline, looked small. A Daisy looked at the letter, then at the model she'd built with her own hands, then at the man walking away. She realized something. He hadn't tried to fix the model, hadn't offered to buy the judges. He'd used his power to clear the rubble he'd created, leaving the path open for her to walk. Minjun. He stopped, didn't turn around immediately. A Daisy ran after him, caught him by the sleeve of his expensive coat. He turned, dark eyes wide with surprise. You're terrible at apologies, she said, breathless. I'm out of practice, he admitted. You're also right, she said. The tower is 4 degrees off, but not for wind shear. I glued it crooked because I was falling asleep at 4 a.m. A slow smile spread across Minjun's face, the real one, the one that made him look like a person instead of a CEO. Inefficient. Human, she corrected. She stepped closer, into the bubble of his personal space. The scent of cedar and rain enveloped her, and she felt her shoulders drop, the tension of the last 3 weeks melting away. "I'm going to take the position with Nakamura," she said, "if they offer it." "They will," Minjun said confidently. "I wrote an excellent letter. And I'm going to be busy. I'm going to work 80-hour weeks. I'm going to be tired, stressed." "I can handle tired," Minjun whispered, reaching out to tuck a stray braid behind her ear, the same gesture from months ago. "I'm an insomniac. I'm awake anyway." "And no more paying for things behind my back," Daisy warned, though she leaned into his touch. "If I have debt, I have debt. It's my debt." "Understood," Minjun nodded solemnly. "Financial autonomy is a core pillar of our new agreement." "Agreement?" Daisy raised an eyebrow. "Is that what this is? A merger?" "A partnership," Minjun corrected. He looked at her with an intensity that burned. "I decided you were the one the moment I saw you sleeping in that lecture hall, Daisy. I just forgot to ask if you agreed." "I agree," she whispered. Minjun didn't hesitate this time. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her in. He kissed her right there, in the middle of the exhibition hall, in front of students, faculty, and the Nakamura scout. It wasn't a polite kiss. It was a reclaiming, a promise. When they finally broke apart, Daisy was breathless and the room was dead silent. "Everyone's staring," she murmured, burying her face in his coat. "Let them stare," Minjun said, looking over her head at the room with his usual arrogance. But his hand on her back was trembling slightly. "They're witnessing a successful partnership." "I'm hungry," Daisy said, pulling back. "And since I'm about to be employed by a top firm, I have demands." "Name them." "Tteokbokki," she said, "from the stall on Myeongdong Street, extra spicy." Minjun grimaced. "That place has a questionable health rating." "Take it or leave it, CEO." Minjun looked at her, his chaotic, brilliant, exhausting engineer. He smiled. "I'll have the driver bring the car around," he said. "No car." Daisy grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the exit. "We walk. It's more efficient." Minjun looked at his hand in hers, then at the exit. He tightened his grip. "Lead the way," he said. And for the first time in his life, Minjun followed someone else's design. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Timeless K-Love. If you enjoyed this journey of love, ambition, and second chances, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment below telling me which moment made your heart race. Was it the lecture hall, the elevator confrontation, or that final kiss? Share this with someone who believes in love that challenges you to be better. Until next time, keep believing in love that builds, not breaks.